Hola. Let's see if we can get ourselves adjusted a little bit. Good enough. Lazy summer home. Ain't got time to call you solar critic, no. Right outside the lazy gate, winter, summer cold. Wondering where the night that's winners wings a mile long, just carry the bird away. Wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. Wait now, discover that you are the song that the morning sings. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. Slowly to makes way. Follows a wagon behind him, it's loaded with clay. Seeds that were silent all burst into bloom and decay. Hey, night comes so quiet, it's close on the heels of day. Wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. Wait now, discover that you are the song that the morning brings. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. that we hear just songs of our own. Wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. Wait now, discover that you are the song that the morning brings. Heart has its beaches, its homelands and songs of its own. Right on, see if anybody's still with me. Kind of a rough start with the sound. I'm still working out the bugs. I think we figured out that we can download the backing tracks and mix them and maybe do like a direct feed somehow. So stay tuned because hopefully our production quality will improve a little bit. Is it too dark in here? I guess that's a little better. I look a little bit more lively. How's everybody doing? It's good to be here and sort of see you. I'm trying to bring the chat up here. I'm having really huge problems with the internet on the computer tonight. It's a firewall issue or something. It's constantly throwing us off. So let's see who's here. Ah, yes, the spicy 73-74 jam. Yeah, okay, so, oh no, was it sideways? Man, yeah, I have issues with that as well. Oh well, I guess we're gonna be sideways tonight, or let's see. Yeah, I can't see my screen, so I have no clue. Was I sideways the whole time, really? Oh my God.
So I have no
Well, here we go. I can hold it, and at least then I'm right side up. All right, well, that's a little bit less, ridiculous. Thank you guys so much for sticking with my super professional A plus production quality operation tonight. Things are super hectic, fuck off. But seriously, you guys, I'm increasingly excited, I think, about the overall trajectory of the human race, which may sound like a preposterous thing to say. No, I'm not tripping this time. I will be next time. The next video we're gonna put out is the next what would you call it? Like, you know, like a real video. Thanks, man. Is going to be this monkey video. Like we've just gotten into so much trouble with monkeys lately. They jumped on our faces and pulled our hair and wrestled with the dog. I thought that was a problem, but actually the monkey was totally playing, I guess. And so anyways, we got a bunch of crazy monkey video and right on. And so we're going to finish editing and do the thumbnail tomorrow, and then I will do another actually tripping improv live stream. Hopefully by then we'll have the sound quality dialed in a little bit better, and I won't have the camera sideways. I don't know why that happens, man. Honestly, I'm just such a caveman that if my partner's not down here to set this up for me, then this kind of shit happens. I don't get it. We're gonna save the political stuff, man. I mean, I'm gonna talk about it, but I guess, you know, one of the things that inspired me to even do this live stream at all tonight is I feel kind of vindicated, because I think that, you know, if you're, I can't say, you'll see. Because a lot of the things that really alienated a lot of people and got me demonetized and got my Facebook, what do you call it, deleted, I guess, by Facebook, are really, really gaining traction. Like I've noticed on TikTok, a lot of the stuff that I said about, you know, race that triggered a lot of people, you know, nothing racist at all. It's just the truth. I'm seeing, you know, on social media platforms that aren't censored, people sound just like I did 2 years ago now, and lots of them. And I mean, maybe it's pretentious of me to say that I think that's good, but I do think it's good. I think that I was correct about a lot of it, all of it, really. You know, at least the really contentious stuff, and it's really incredible to see. To see, I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, the reality is that, you know, all stereotypes have some basis in reality or they wouldn't exist. I mean, you know, I'm a white guy, so I can say that white people tend to be the most bland, sterile. We actually almost like work like Clorox, like bleaching the spice out of like all the cultures that we encounter. Like, and, you know, a lot of that had to do with the religion in the past. Nowadays, it's just the consumer, the materialistic society, I think, that has made white people so bland and lame. But what's interesting is that whole metaphysical, mystical thing of everything containing its contradiction is still readily apparent, because, you know, who are the wildest people too? And a lot of them are, you know, rock musicians, punk rock, heavy metal. Yeah, basically Christianity is and that's one of the things I feel like I got a lot of crap for that's really becoming like more popular. I'm seeing a lot more of it in social media, this kind of anti-Christian trend, and I'm very supportive of that. I've, you know, I mean, if you guys have been following my channel for a while, then you know that I've been talking about, you know, the how absurdly mistranslated the Hebrew Bible is, the Old Testament. I mean, from the first word, it's generally completely wrong. You know, Jehovah, for one thing, is not a man. It's not an individual. It's an androgynous collective. If anything, Elohim is the word. So, you know, there's that type of stuff. And then there's also, you know, if it was just like this harmless blandening, I call it, the blandening, then, you know, I mean, it would still suck, but it's something much more, oh, the word is escaping me, but it's something much more toxic, I guess, than that. When we look out across the terrain of conspiracy theorists. I think the big problem with conspiracy theorists for me, it's the same issue I have with a lot of New Agers. When you have the people that represent those that are thinking outside of the box, acting like complete idiots and believing all kinds of stupid shit that's obviously false. When the people that really are seeing the truth step forward and contradict the mainstream narrative, it's way easier to dismiss them if they can be lumped in with all these maniacs that are saying that the earth is flat, that, just all the insane conspiracy crap that's just total drivel. And if you, think about where it comes from and trace its origins back to mainstream Christianity for the most part, and then you say, okay, well, what happened there? Well, when you have been conditioned to believe that a man lived underwater inside of a whale for 3 days, and all of the other crazy shit that's in the Old Testament that's obviously completely insane, the mind is holographic. So when it has a pattern, when it has an imprint, when you create a precedent, just like in law, every aspect of perception is informed by this malformed imprint, So obviously, once you've been conditioned to just believe a completely ridiculous, observably false, demonstrably false, some of them are rooted in anti-Semitism as well. But the whole thing started with Christianity, and it's interesting to me because when I see the Christian right talking about a satanic hoax to destroy spirituality and oppress humanity, it's almost like listening to like a wealthy white cop complain about privilege or something. You know what I mean? Like, these are the oppressors. If there's a satanic hoax in the world, it's Christianity. That is at least for me as a Western person, and I think many of the other cultures around the world have suffered terribly from this as well. But the oppressive force that not only is oppressive and Catholicism is like next level Christianity. I mean, that's like that's stepping it up a notch. In fact, I think that speaking of satanic hoaxes, I don't think that it's a coincidence that that so many of the Catholic priests are child molesters at all. I think that when Aleister Crowley labeled the Catholic Church the synagogue of Satan, he was absolutely correct. I think it's ritualized abuse, and I think the symbolism is the sacrifice of innocence, which is it's just sort of a macro or a microcosmic playing out of the story of the innocent Christ that was, how does the story go? God created man so that he could send himself here to kill himself in order to save us from himself, I think is the that's the narrative there, right? So pretty crazy. But what I was saying about TikTok and all of these other uncensored platforms is that there are tons and tons and tons of black people coming forward and saying, hey, this is not about what it appears to be. This is about dividing people. This is about actually creating more racism. And I think that people tend to project their own, I don't want to say their own intelligence, but it's like they're going to sort of reduce the complexity and sophistication of the world that they're trying to perceive down to something that they can process. And I think that one of the results of that is that they find a lot of the propaganda campaigns, the idea that that's what they are, to be preposterous. I don't think that there are a lot of people that can really be comfortable with the idea that the government would, for example, stage events in order to manipulate the lower classes into all hating and killing each other. But if you just actually research and look at, for example, the writings of Lao Tzu and a lot of the propagandists over the years and a lot of the political philosophers, and any of the journals or diaries that exist of any of the royal elites, the idea of keeping the peasants divided so that they are manageable is ubiquitous. It's not conspiracy. It's not paranoia. And you know, I don't point out any of these things in order to encourage people to be afraid. I do it because I feel like if we are to have any hope of fixing the situation, then we need to be able to perceive it as it is and not reduce the scale of malignancy down to something that we can handle. Because if you treat cancer, because you're only comfortable with the idea that you have a cold, you just treat yourself for a cold, you're gonna die of the cancer. And so, let's talk about something bright and metaphysical for a minute, though. And this actually, I got this out of sync. It's funny, you know, when I play music, if anything is off, it just throws me off for, you know, it's. So when I started the live stream, and I had a good feeling that this was crooked, and that, you know, I had like two windows playing the backing track at once, so there was all the distortion at first. I never really recovered from that until maybe this moment. I wanted to mention this because, you know, I try to talk about metaphysics and how we can engage our consciousness to assist us in our quest to perceive the universe as it is, to realize our highest aspirations and to bring them into materialization, I guess, to realize them, so that we can be in homeostasis with both ourselves and our environment, because you can't have one without the other. And so one of the like most popular, I don't know what to call it, like a trend in metaphysical thinking, I guess, is this idea of the double slit experiment and the observer effect in physics on particles of light. I have had some pretty extraordinary like visionary experiences with San Pedro and just meditation and contemplation. You know, I mean, I have for decades, since I was a child, studied physics in depth and mysticism of all traditions, shamanism. You know, lots of experience with psychedelics, and when I take psychedelics, usually what I'm doing is processing all of these different. It's like a multidisciplinary alchemical information extraction process, you know. And so what I always kind of came away with as the thing of fundamental importance is light. And over the last couple of years in particular, I've really been fixated with the idea that consciousness and light that light produces consciousness. And I think that, you know, of course, I don't have hard scientific proof of that, and I don't think that anyone ever could, but I think that if you take physics at face value and you accept that all matter is basically, you know, and this is like a super huge reduction to simplicity, but all matter is light in a standing wave. So we have light basically, and then we have nothingness. And of course it's a little bit more complex than that, but that's fair to say. And so somehow consciousness arises from light. And one of the big issues that I have had with my own ideas and with, you know, this idea of the observer effect, and it's something that when people set out to debunk these kind of ideas, this is generally what they say, and it makes total sense. What is the force that operates by means of consciousness on subatomic particles? Yeah, all matter is light. Yeah, so that's what it is. Like, and that's one of the big secrets of Freemasonry and all of these mystical traditions, and the reason why the alchemists always drew a face on the sun. It's the reason why Modest Mouse, the rock musician, wrote that all the stars are projectors. They generate consciousness and they are projecting. It's like the source and fount of our souls are the physical suns in a certain sense, I think. And so I had this issue, like, what is the mechanism of action that consciousness could use to compel chaotic energy to order? And so I looked it up because I couldn't remember, and light, oh no, that's what happened actually. I have this in reverse. The idea to investigate this was triggered by the discovery of an article online. And that article said that light can indeed move objects, that a laboratory in Geneva or somewhere, they were looking at focusing beams of nothing but photons and moving physical objects with them. And so that, you have to kind of take for granted that, right. Well, and see, that's the thing. Let me see if I can find the words to articulate this, but it's like all reflective, right? I mean, all the mystical traditions and the guru-y types have all talked about that, how it's all a process of reflection. And so if the stars are the sources of our consciousness, then they're also going to be the source of the materials that we're composed of. And I think that for a lot of people, I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Navajo people in southwestern Colorado and northern New Mexico, and they, and when I say lucky, I mean lucky that they were willing to talk to me about these kind of spiritual and metaphysical ideas, because they're generally not shared with outsiders. And they have this thing about star stuff, they call it. And I always thought that was really, really crazy that the Navajo know, before there was ever any science, before there was any astrophysics, before there was any of that, the Navajo have known that we are star stuff. We're just made of star stuff. And that our consciousness is connected to the star that gives us light. That our consciousness is the light. And I think that, the Bible, I know with absolute certainty that it was written, at least in part, by actual adepts. And, there's at least one pope that I'm aware of that has spoken about this. He said, the people need the truth veiled in myth. And he was speaking of Christianity. So, that's a crazy one, that they're so confident that the sheep are so brainwashed that they can speak like a pope will speak about Christianity in the context of it being a myth. And they're not even concerned that they'll lose their flock. So that's a hell of a thing to really wrap your mind about. And that's not the only time they've done it. There's a documentary, Religiosity, where I think it's Bill Mayer that made it, and he goes to the Vatican and he actually talks to a Vatican priest on the grounds of the Vatican church or whatever the hell it is. And the guy doesn't hesitate to speak about it totally openly, that it's all a hoax, that it's totally a fraud, that Jesus isn't real, that it's actually polytheistic. I mean, this priest is on camera, knows he's being interviewed. They're that confident that people are not gonna, like, if you try to tell somebody, you ain't gonna learn what you don't wanna know. Let's just keep it simple, right? But what I'm saying about that is that somebody that was behind that story did know these deep metaphysical and spiritual truths, and they are thinly veiled in the stories, and that is why people resonate so strongly with them. That's why people believe it with such conviction, because there are little bits and pieces of the actual truth. And the reality, as far as I can tell, is that we are pure awareness. Somehow, all order is generated by a process whereby light, through some unknown mechanism, compels chaotic energy to order. And so when you have this character in the Bible that is supposed to represent the divine consciousness, and he says, I am the light, he isn't really saying that, this individual person standing before you is the Most High God incarnate, at least not any more than anyone else, right? Because it's not, it just doesn't, that concept, that idea, and this is another reason that Christianity needs to be thrown under the bus. The idea that divinity is separate, and it's not just Christianity. A lot of the, I guess, institutionalized religions have this idea that God is something separate from creation, from materiality, and that even the idea that someone can embody the divine is blasphemy, or that you would be, that's like a big deal. Like I used to say, because I was surrounded by Christians in the South, out on the playground, I would say, I am God. I would yell it, and they would all just be like ducking under stuff, expecting me to get hit by lightning. And of course, nothing happened, because it's absolutely true, for one thing. And I mean, gosh, I don't want to go too far into this, because it's just so obvious, and we should all know this by now. But there are some elements of it that are sneaky enough that they've managed to sort of stick around, and the effects of it are very subtle. And well, no, they're not. They're well hidden, I guess, would be a better way to put it. So yeah, the idea that the divine is something separate from creation is ridiculous. It's like saying that my ear is more me than my nose, or my tooth is more me than my eye. I'm pretty sure that in the Bible somewhere it says that, God is like, I am the all. And it's like, well, that's everything, right? And so, by the way, since, I mentioned the Navajo, I think one of the things that people really need to understand or think about, it's good to be conscious of this, is that when, an indigenous person says that rock is alive, and the white guy they're talking to is like, oh my God, you stupid primitive, what they actually mean, I think, is that the rock is consciousness. The way that Navajo is structured, just as an example, is there's like no way to translate it really into like a Western tongue. It just doesn't work. And even to this day, when they speak of modern things, they don't use Navajo. They don't have words for it. Like if you're driving down the road and the car is running out of gas, they will literally say the metal horse needs to drink. They won't. It's not like there's a word for car now or something. And so I think that if you are aware of this sort of hermetic mystery school, it's really beyond categorization, because I think it's what all traditions throughout all of time and throughout all of Earth and beyond, I'm sure, they're all the same. And when people say that, they usually mean that the effect is the amelioration of people from hatred and prejudice and selfishness and all of these fear-based psychological and emotional states. But I think that it's actually deeper than that. That you can tell that you have found one of the secret keys to unlocking the higher mind. Is that, for example, when you understand that all is consciousness, when the Navajo says to you, this rock is alive, you know what he means. And when the Hermetic magician says, the all is mind, you know that he means the same thing that the Navajo guy meant when he told you that the rock is alive. I think there is a fundamentally true metaphysics, and it is not bound to any of the usual parameters that have constrained religion. And I think that the restrictions of religion actually impede true spiritual development, which is one of the most tragic and maybe obvious ironies of human culture, is that the prevailing spiritual traditions are actually that which obstructs spiritual development. I actually am. It depends on what you mean. When you say, "What do you think of Buddhism?" There are so many different. What do you call it? Like, like the divisions of Christianity. No, Charles, there is a spiritual side to Christianity if a spiritual person decides that they're Christian. It's just that there is huge danger that they will take things out of context, or that they will not see past the traps and pitfalls and distortions and become delusional and trapped within a dogmatic system. But, Theravedic Buddhism versus, you know what I mean? Here's the issue, basically. Some schools of Buddhist thought are totally focused on suffering. And I don't think that really serves anyone. I'm also very suspicious of any institutionalized spiritual discipline, because they all, I'm not convinced that people really understand what enlightenment is, by and large. I actually think that the common perception or conception of illumination or enlightenment is not correct. I'm very suspicious that the idea that all spiritual or illuminated or enlightened people are just total pacifists, I see control in that, and I know with absolute certainty that the religions were designed. I mean, I don't know if you guys heard about the anthropologist that discovered the papers in Rome in 2013, where the consulate talked about why they created the Jesus myth. The Palestinians were expecting this warrior messiah, and they wanted to make them pacifists so that they could be easily controlled. And here's how I can illustrate this the best, I think. And by the way, you guys, we have been demonetized, and we are like in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, working with a cryptocurrency company to try to help the indigenous people maximize their conservation funds. Sorry, I'm really tired. I didn't go to sleep until 4 in the morning for some reason last night. So we're here doing good work, and we do need support because, again, we have been demonetized, and that used to pay our rent, and there's no super chat that you can press, which used to make these live streams a lot more productive in that way. So there is a cryptocurrency Binance Smart Chain address in the description. There's Zelle and PayPal email, and there's a Cash App. So we really do appreciate your support. If you're able to give that to us, and if not, at least hit the like button and share these videos with anyone you think might watch them, because growing the channel really help us. I'm starting to do a little bit of influencing work, and bigger numbers will help me get paid more. So we really do appreciate you guys. Okay, so Man, where were we? We're okay. All right. Yeah. This is a good one. The way that I would illustrate this idea that the concept of spiritual people as total pacifists, and I'm not like, well, hear me out. You know, I'm not saying that they're really spiritual people are going to be dicks. That's highly unlikely. But we have a tendency, we have a superiority complex as humans. You know, we might have respect for a tiger. We might think it's beautiful. We might forgive it for tearing things to shreds and enjoying it. But we think of it as a lower manifestation of consciousness. It's an animal. So it just doesn't know any better than to enjoy murdering the shit out of something and eating it raw. And I don't think that that's true. I think that an animal is a manifestation of pure spirit, undiluted by, unrestrained by culture. And I think that our sort of arrogant perception of these animals as, you know, functioning on a lower frequency, or coming from a place of instinct as a lower place. I mean, and when you look through what are, in my opinion, the most powerful magical traditions, sexual energy is one of the, you know, fundamental sources of creative power. It's a catalyst to enlightenment and states of higher consciousness when it is mastered and used correctly. And, you know, I mean, talk about mastery. If you ever seen a tiger kill something, so I just don't buy it. I don't buy that. It's not that someone who is enlightened is going to be a pacifist exactly. It's just that they are going to be bound through their understanding, through actually almost like a mathematical alignment, a symmetry in their consciousness that is in homeostasis with the positive gestalt of the life force, of this energy that people have called chi, or prana, or Keter of the Jews, you know. And this is another very powerful tool, I think, that we can use to actually discern, to separate the wheat from the chaff. We do have these universal ideas that may have different names in different cultures, just like dog has a different name in different cultures. But prana, chi, keter, I mean, I'm sure you guys could add some more to that list. I used to know the Navajo word for it. There's a Shuar word for it that's escaping me at the moment. So it's an actual thing. And there are other things. I'll give you an example. By the way, you guys, I am teaching a course on ritual magic, shamanism, and you know, I teach basically syncretism, which is where things are, a system is derived from multiple traditions or multiple sources. So, you know, in my case, I try to stay abreast of the sciences as much as possible. I've studied a lot of psychology. I've studied shamanism of South America. I've studied a lot of the Eastern traditions. I've spent time with the Native Americans in the deserts of the Southwest, on the West Coast of California and Southern Oregon. And so those are my primary sources. And Jewish mysticism, of course, is a huge influence, which, you know, has nothing to do with the Old Testament God or any of that stuff, really. So check out the Patreon link if you are interested in that. Also, you know, you guys, if you want guitar lessons, I also teach those in the thing. So here's what I'm saying about the other ubiquitous concepts. You know, when we find this, when totally disconnected cultures have the same concepts about these like metaphysical ideas, I think it indicates, or suggests at least, a strong possibility that it's something that's actually true, like objectively true. Four o'clock in the morning. Yeah, good night. Go to sleep. I'm glad that you're here. I don't recognize your handle there, so it seems like you're new. So welcome to the Illuminati. Okay, so what I was saying is that if you are a Western occultist, you will refer to those that are dark magicians that serve the left-hand path and only work for themselves as turning to the left-hand path, right? And those that serve the collective as turning to the right. And it's interesting, you know, this the Kabbalion talks a lot about this, but if you go far enough, you'll end up back around where you were, right? And so the interesting thing about enlightenment is that ultimately you realize that, you know, you can go so far left, which honestly, I think I did that without really even realizing it. Like I went way further down the left-hand path than I realized until many years after the fact. You know, no one was harmed, no one was sacrificed, and nothing like that, but well, we'll talk about that in a second. So you turn to the left far enough and you realize that serving the collective actually is what's in the best interest of the individual. So if you go far enough down the left-hand path, you're going to discover, you'll find yourself, you know, on the right-hand path. And it's also true that going down the right-hand path without balance can be just as destructive as taking the left-hand path. But I'm getting off track. So we have that in the Western mysteries. In the jungles of Borneo or South America, those that turn to the left are the dark sorcerers that serve their own interests and do evil things and put curses on people, and those that turn to the right are the healers. So the terminology is a little bit different, but it's basically the same. And then even in the invocation of the archangels in the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram that is believed to have come to us from Egypt in its original form, or Mesopotamia, somewhere like that. The invocation of the archangels on the left hand is Oriel, who is material, who is abundance, who is success in hunting, who is money, and all of the material stuff on your left hand again. So, you know, there are things like that. You know, we have the chi and the prana and the keter of the Jewish mystical tradition that are all the same thing. And you know, I'm sure you guys could remind me of a few other names for the same thing. And then you have the left-hand path as the same designation as other traditions all over the world. And you know, there are other ubiquitous practices that serve the same function throughout the world. We have the burning of various incenses, we have the drumming, we have chanting, there's often whistling that occurs. There's you know, one of my favorites is when science and mysticism dovetail. I think that is one of the most powerful indicators of truth that exists, or that can, you know, materialize. That is the vector that we're looking for. So this idea that physics has revealed to us that underneath of the material is energy. And when we go to a healer who is a shaman in South America, or really anywhere, you know, in the Sungus in Siberia, the Bahiti in Africa, they're looking at your energetic being in order to find the things that are out of alignment, or you know, here they will talk about like darts, almost like poison darts, that are energetic obstructions that they believe that evil shaman have shot at you. And at the same time that I think these consistencies in disparate cultures can be revelatory, I think that they can also indicate where things may not be true. I have always intuitively, and my experience, you know, and I have experience in a lot of different contexts in this regard, or in this area, and I have never encountered a malignant spiritual entity, or, you know, people talk about these parasitical entities and
all this sort of thing. And I have never encountered anything. I've encountered a lot of very convincing entities and beings in, you know, ayahuasca ceremonies, and just in the course of my life when I was not taking any psychedelics at all. I had experiences that just involved, you know, inner voices that were they were correct about the stuff that they said consistently. And seem to emanate from somewhere other than my own being. I never absolutely made up my mind about what they were, and I think it's important not to do that, to protect yourself and you know, to ensure healthy skepticism is very important. No matter what happens, you know, you have to always check yourself. But yeah, I have never encountered any malignant entities. Yeah, the skeleton man. And there are a lot of shamans here that the tribes don't even have words for negative entities or dark spirits or anything like that. When there is something that yeah, that's a really good point, Fernando, that you know, there's always a counterbalance. And density is another way of expressing the idea of substance, right? So diamond is much heavier than the coal that it's surrounded by. So I think that, you know, when you think about everything containing its contradiction and the sort of balance that the universe always sort of generates things in equal and opposite quantities, sort of. When you see the mainstream or the overall influence of these religious institutions, that's the coal, and then the people that actually manage to get something out of it are like the diamonds. And, you know, they weigh just about as much because they have so much more density of substance. But they're much smaller, and there are far fewer of them. The mass is mostly just carbon, and it's just dirty and pointless. I mean, I'm too hard on the muggles sometimes, and I know it, you know, but I mean, it's a difficult one. Although I saw something today that really, this guy, someone murdered his son who was delivering pizzas, and the guy that was convicted of murdering him, he hugged him at the end of the trial and totally forgave him, and they were muggles, you know. So the muggles, the normies, whatever you want to call them, they're not all bad. They're just really boring, and they'll let their masters destroy the world and kill us all if we don't snap them out of it. They mean well. They just are really having a hard time wrapping their heads around what's going on. And I think that, you know, we don't really know exactly what's going on either, and we shouldn't make pretenses at that. But I think it's safe to say that the mainstream narrative has worn pretty thin. So we just went way off track there. Yeah, and I also, you know, it's really disturbing to me when I see people on TikTok, Christians, that are like, I am nothing without Christ, and neither are you. And that is just so toxic and so ridiculous. And I really, you know, it's really difficult to approach someone who is suffering from the delusions of religion with enough tact that they are receptive. And, you know, I think the old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions is, you know, it seems that there's a lot of old wisdom, you know, even just like normal American cultural wisdom that people have forgotten somehow. And that whole road to hell paved with good intentions thing seems to have been totally lost on the current generation. At least, I shouldn't say the current generation, but the mainstream, I guess. I don't know what to call them. But, there's tolerance is good. I'm not putting tolerance down. There's nothing wrong with tolerance. Tolerance is good. Being cruel or oppressive, or exclusionary, is that the word I'm looking for? Based on beliefs or any reason, obviously is not good. At the same time, I think the idea that we shouldn't challenge people that have toxic belief systems, that are perpetuating anti-evolutionary ideologies and oppressive belief systems. We have to be tactful so that we're effective. But I think that challenging and shining the light where people are very hesitant or absolutely refusing to look is going to be a fundamentally important part of this process of redeeming humanity and moving out from the shadow that history has cast and into the light of a new consciousness and a new paradigm and a new way of relating to each other and relating to the environment. Just as I talk about syncretic traditions in the religious paradigm, the syncretism in politics and culture and race and all across the board is going to ultimately facilitate the best systems. Yeah, I mean, people, that's really our biggest problem. And that's one of the reasons that psychedelics are such an efficacious tool and why they're so important is that, and it's also the reason for bad trips, more than anything. People really, really want to believe that they have answers. I don't understand it because I know the futility of it. I don't know if that's just a matter of, a certain level of intelligence or just that I just was not exposed to that kind of indoctrination as a child. But I don't understand this like fear of the unknown that people have, but I do know that it is one of the most powerful agents of compulsion that drives people, whether you're talking about politics or metaphysics. People just can't handle the idea that they just don't know what's going on. Atheists are absolutely ridiculous in that regard, just to the same extent that religious people are. To insist that absolutely that there's nothing but blind, deterministic, probabilistic, coincidental, just that the universe is a bunch of gobbledygook that somehow organized itself in this super sophisticated system is just, that's just retarded to me. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine. I mean, it's the whole analogy of the tornado passing over a junkyard and randomly assembling a 747. That is far more probable than the idea that the universe just randomly constructed itself. Just randomly. I mean, it's just very, very silly. So, I don't know, man. That's an hour. There's 20 of you guys, though. That's pretty cool. That's 21 now. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, there was more to this for sure. I mean, I have just seen a lot of stuff today that really, I have to be honest, maybe it's egotistical of me, but it was a little bit frustrating because I just got so much hate and so much, I mean, I lost thousands of dollars in supporters and now a few years later, all of the stuff that I was saying is like widely accepted by people that many of them probably were throwing rocks at me for saying it at the time. Well, I mean, I don't know what you mean by intelligent design, and I don't know that. I mean, that's almost too much in my opinion, anyways. I think that there is some kind of consciousness that imposed order on the chaotic energy in the primordial stew before creation. But I also don't really know that it's like a being that's like sitting somewhere and thinking like, I'm gonna make a universe and it's gonna have all this shit in it, and I don't think it happened quite like that either. But I hope so. I don't really know what to do about this. Like I could express this with like a very sophisticated computer graphic, but I could never design it. I've sort of had a vision that I think could do wonders in sort of explaining what I'm trying to say, but I don't know that this is, Terrence McKenna talked about this a lot, that our current modality of linguistic expression is not sufficient for the new modality of consciousness, once we have reached this level of consciousness, what we really need is a three-dimensional living language. And if you guys are familiar with the artist Alex Gray, his wife Allison has created paintings of what she I can't remember the language, but it's like these letters that she says are like this language that you see when you take LSD, and I know exactly what she's talking about. I mean, I saw them the first time I ever took LSD as a kid. I remember the moment I was sitting in a tunnel, a concrete tunnel, in the local town, whatever, I guess a sewer sort of thing, and I could see these three-dimensional patterns in the walls, and I was like, that's a language. Those are letters. And the facility of that, I guess, is that, well, I'll use an anecdote from an ayahuasca experience that I had to try to illustrate this. I had, when I first started drinking ayahuasca, the first like 10 or 11 experiences were just all of this chaotic, not chaotic, but just gobbledygook. Like it made no sense. It was just weird stuff. One time it was just like all these tendrils that, that was the only time, or one of maybe like 2 times I almost actually freaked out, because up until that point, the visions had been contained in sort of like a square, and it was sort of like I was at a drive-through movie theater just kind of watching this stuff. But this time, the tendrils started to come out of the thing. I didn't like that. They started, yeah, the zombie apocalypse, that'll be our closing subject. I mean, what do you mean, what is it? You know what it is. This is the whole reason we're sitting here talking, trying to figure out what the hell to do about it. And honestly, I think that we are doing something about it just by, the eyes everywhere. My girlfriend in particular, really, she just always, when she takes like acid in particular, she's like, there's just those eyeballs, the eyeballs. By the way, that was her in the thumbnail, in case you guys were wondering who the beautiful girl is. I always see eyes on everything. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I am getting at with this. Well, when you look at them, and the closer you look at them, the smaller you get. It's because they are holographic, just like everything else. Fractal too. Yeah, I mean, most revelations of the most profound level are they seem totally obvious. You're like, holy shit, how have I been walking around like with all this stuff right at the tip of my nose my entire life, and I haven't. Okay, but here's what I was saying. That eventually I complained to Pachamama, or the ayahuasca spirit, sort of like the narrator of the experience, and she said, it was this trolley, this like super like weird, like it looked like Asian artist had drawn it, kind of cartoony, futuristic like trolley, and it's just like I could tell it was moving down the street, but nothing in the vision was changing. It's weird. It's like it was still, but I knew it was supposed to be going down the street. And I got kind of mad. I was like, man, I keep drinking this stuff, and every time there's just all this whacked out shit that, you know, I can make no sense out of. So, you know, what is this crap? And she said, the mind works in symbols. So it doesn't matter whether you understand the symbols that you're perceiving or not consciously. There's still information being communicated to your subconscious. And so this three-dimensional language that Allison Gray has painted are that language that that is the language of symbolism. And I think that when we have so much compressed novelty, as Terence McKenna might have said, the tiny mouth noises, since we're using all of his dialect, are just not adequate to communicate on the level that we need to be able to communicate once our consciousness is operating on a more sophisticated plane. So, okay, so then the zombie apocalypse. I mean, it's funny how things. Yeah, the Tool videos were great. All of them were great. Animating Alex Gray's art was absolutely brilliant. Tool is phenomenal. Although I wasn't as thrilled with the last album as a lot of people. Well, of course it's culty. Anytime you have anyone that has attained any kind of level of consciousness and demonstrated it to people, you get that, like, putting them on a pedestal and getting weird about it. Yeah, I mean, okay, so it's that fear thing that we were talking about earlier. It's this indoctrination and attachment to political ideologies, to antiquated religious modalities and institutions that do not serve the human race and are actually completely antithetical to progress in every way. They're anti-evolutionary. Yeah, I would say 2 solid songs, but let's see if we agree about which ones they are. Descending. It starts with a T and it has something to do with a storm. Damn it. What's the other one? It's a storm, right? Some kind of storm. I can't remember the fucking name. No, I didn't like Culling at all. Tempest. Yeah. Tempest. Okay, Chocolate Chip Trip was cool too, but Danny Carey is just an incredible. If you're a Tool fan and you haven't, well, it just has those really cool riffs at the end. But honestly, the issue that I have with all the new Tool stuff is that, and this goes back to 10,000 Days, they have been playing the same 5 riffs in a different order. And honestly, like, I'm not a huge fan of Culling, but it is one of the few times on the new album that they didn't just re-record something that they've already recorded on. Nearly all of it was from Lateralis. On the new album. They just re-recorded a bunch of shit from Lateralis, and they started doing it on 10,000 Days, where it's not like it's just like close to, well, Lateralis and some of the songs on Salival I think are even better than anything on Lateralis. The live version of Third Eye that is on Salival is like the best thing ever. Like, if you're ever tripping balls on acid, listen to that and you'll never recover. It's like you can see these 3-dimensional kaleidoscopic geometries in the music. It's definitely deliberate. It's almost like what happens when musicians have taken a lot of psychedelics and they've really mastered themselves, This happens with Phish, the Grateful Dead, and Tool probably more than any other groups of musicians that I've ever heard. And I actually got to talk to Danny Carey about this at the Baked Potato in LA one night. And I was really curious, like, or do you know about Phish and the Grateful Dead and how you guys are so similar, but yet, you know, and he totally did. So that was weird, because I thought they had to be hip to those other psychedelic bands, but it's not really. But anyways, when the psychedelic mind, it's difficult to explain. The way the Grateful Dead described it is that it was sort of like a download that, you know, Phil Lesh, the bass player from the Grateful Dead, said that, you know, a song like Dark Star that's just all improvisation is playing somewhere in some other dimension all the time. And so they used psychedelics and other drugs to turn off the reducing valve in the nervous system in order to access the universal mind and to extract or to download this music in a sort of like collective trance state. And when that happens, the music carries with it a capacity to catalyze gnosis, I think, in the people that are experiencing it. And so that's what the real power of Grateful Dead concerts was, and Phish concerts to a degree. No unvaccinated people? Are they really doing that in the venues? Man, it's so dumb. Look, I'm not taking a position on the vaccine itself, all right? Here's the reality, and this is, you know, it's a really difficult thing for people to accept, and it's difficult for me. I have a son. You know, I mean, if he died, it would be terrible for me, but I just can't even imagine like watching my partner go through it. Like that's, you know, at least as bad of a thought as like seeing what would happen to her if that were to happen. So I understand why people are scared of things that can kill them and maybe their children. You know, it's not like I don't get it. But I think the reality is that nature is an intelligence, and the real problem with using vaccinations and a lot of the other you know, the derivative things, that modern medicine, you know, preserving life unnaturally, is that, for one thing, you're preserving genetics that nature would not. So you're like stagnating the gene pool in a sense, and whether it's engineered by humans or not, to me, is not even relevant as to whether or not it's a function of the universe at large. In my opinion, everything is a manifestation of the universal mind. So it's just throwing the biosphere out of homeostasis. Viruses are there to perform a necessary function and reduce the population so that we don't, for example, completely kill the oceans, which, you know, and I've noticed that as soon as I started talking about this, the number of people watching dropped by like 8 or 9 or something, you know, as soon as you mention it. That's one thing we really have to do, you guys, is when people start saying things that you don't want to hear, you need to listen to them anyways. Because when psychologists will tell you that when cognitive bias is confronted, it causes a fight or flight response. And so, you know, for example, when I say something that there's a lot of contention, give me a second to get through this thought, and I'll try to answer that. People will just tune out, and you know, I'm guilty of that myself. I used to really strongly identify with being on the left, because I saw the right wing as like, you know, this Christian fundamentalist freedom. Like they would talk about freedom and wave flags and stuff, but they didn't really seem to support personal freedom. And now it's weird. It's like now the left is that for different reasons, and the right is actually like more progressive in a lot of ways than the left is. So what I'm getting at is that in the last year or two, there are a number of things that the right has actually been right about. But I am so, even with I really try to monitor my thoughts, to be, mindful and open-minded. So, I sympathize with people that haven't necessarily committed their lives to that, because even for me as a person that has, it's difficult. I think that I thought the right was wrong about a lot of stuff that it turns out they're actually correct about, just because you do that. When anything confronts your cognitive bias or cognitive dissonance, it causes this fight or flight response. And if it's just on the internet, you can just click away from it, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. So I think that people really need to start listening to each other somehow. The reality is that right and left have more common ground to stand on at this point in history than they have in the entirety of my life in the past. And they're closer to civil war than they have ever been in my lifetime. Both of those things are true. And that, again, people that think that like there is no agenda to divide and conquer, the fact that we are in that circumstance, the only explanation for it is that it was engineered by the people that do the social engineering. I mean, it seems to me that most people on the left in particular, it's like the left doesn't believe in social engineering and the right doesn't think they're susceptible to it. The right thinks they can believe whatever they think because they believe in faith-based religion. And so believing things with absolutely no evidence that are completely absurd with total conviction is something that they have a fundamental precedent in their psychology for. The left is always convinced that it's taking the moral high ground, and so it's very, very easy to manipulate people when you have them convinced that they're acting virtuously or righteously. And, one of the main mechanisms that's used to manipulate the right is this idea that there's this biblical thing happening. And so they are compelled to make all events fall in line with their prophetical expectations, with their, in order to confirm their religious doctrine. And part of the problem right now is that as enlightenment becomes more common, as Christian dogma is less defining of our political and cultural landscape, it's as if the satanic prophecy is coming true. When in reality, as I said earlier, Christianity is the satanic hoax that we are being oppressed by. It's not that, there's a satanic hoax that's conspiring to. And it's interesting too, the victim complex that they have, like, oh, we're all gonna be persecuted. And it's like, well, you know what, motherfucker, what comes around goes around, I mean, I know you don't believe in it because it's an Eastern thing, but karma is not a bitch. It's pure mathematics. And you motherfuckers have been burning Gnostics and indigenous people and, alive by the tens of thousands, and now you're gonna whine about oppression because we're becoming too sophisticated and evolved to believe in a Bronze Age myth anymore. I mean, come on, that's what's actually happening. Like, we're just finally, how long has it been since we believed in the rest of the Bronze Age myths? Like, when did we bury them all? The only one still following us around like an unwanted groupie at an after party is Jesus, right? We've gotten rid of the rest of them. Okay, so someone asked a minute ago how, I don't even like rephrasing this question because it just sounds so pompous, but Then again, though, you guys, this is something that I've struggled to come to terms with over the years, and it's something I can offer, I think, in terms of like wisdom that I've acquired, and it's a difficult balance. But you do, when you're good at something, I guess you have to be able to acknowledge it in order to really like capitalize on it and use it. But he asked how I got so advanced in so much of this stuff, and the answer to that question is that from a very, very young age, I was just totally obsessed with metaphysical questions, and I was surrounded by right-wing Christians and rednecks and violence and poverty, and so transcending a lot of different things by every means necessary. And honestly, I don't know what the it was just, I was so young when I became obsessed with all this stuff. My mother told me that and this sounds absurd, but I actually I was in the top 99%, what do they call, like aptitude tests, or I was in the top 1%. So I was very smart, and I was reading at an 11th grade level by the time I was in 2nd grade. So according to my mother, when I was like 5.5 years old, I read the Bible. And then she said it was the first time she heard me use profanity. I walked up to her in the kitchen at my grandmother's house and handed her the Bible and said, "This is a bunch of bullshit," and stormed off. So, and that's, so when everybody else in junior high school was playing sports and video games and doing all of this shit, I was reading about superstring theory and studying plant medicine and philosophies a lot of people grow up and they get jobs, and I think the monotony conditions them to become the blandening of life, I call it. The 3 M's of Terence McKenna: monogamy, monotony, and monotheism. I never was subjected to that, so I continued with my metaphysical quest. I still, it's slowed down since my health has been bad over the last few years. You said there's no stutter or ums. I definitely say sometimes. I'm actually a lot less articulate and a little bit slower than I was a few years ago. If you watch some of my older videos, some of them have no editing, and I'm just like, it was crazy and kind of sad to watch, because I can tell that my health issues have really dulled my mind. Yeah, I used to read. I used to. I don't read at all anymore, but I used to read a ton, I studying too. I mean, it's you don't just, I wouldn't just read. Like, I would look up every single word that I didn't understand. I mean, and if I came in across concepts or even historical, like whatever, anything in any of the books that I needed to understand better, then I would make sure I actually understood. So I think it's not just that I read a lot, it's also what I read. I started reading Timothy Leary and Terence McKenna and James Joyce and Robert Anton Wilson and that sort of stuff. And I think that, Timothy Leary, thank you, Chronic. Timothy Leary, I think, is an underrated genius. A lot of people have a negative perception of him because I don't have access to lion's mane and turkey tails here, or I definitely would do that. I do have access to psilocybin mushrooms, which catalyze neurogenesis, but we don't have, I'm in South America in the Amazon rainforest. We don't have lion's mane or turkey tail. We do have ayahuasca and choliponga, and I'm sure there's so much stuff in that jungle. I'm sure there's some equivalent. The Stamets stack. If you want to build your brain and boost your neurological capacity, the Stamets stack, you can make it yourself. You don't have to buy his version. It's just basically lion's mane, niacin, and psilocybin. And the niacin is actually important to a degree that you might be surprised by, because it's you know how you have to like trim bushes in order to like, or what is it? What's a better analogy? Like you prune pot plants and stuff. Your neural pathways need the same kind of maintenance, or I don't know if need is the right word, but they benefit from it. And so niacin, when you're depressed or you have an alcohol problem or even smoke too much marijuana, the what are they called? The little fingers in the end, I think dendrites, they shrivel up. And psilocybin can actually bring them back to life. It's the only compound known to medical science to have the capacity to do that. To the degree that at Johns Hopkins University right now, they're giving it to brain dead people that have not responded to any other treatment in order to try to resuscitate them. But that's the function of the niacin, is to sort of prune the dead stuff. And Terence McKenna's brother, Dennis McKenna, I can't remember exactly how they did this, but Buddhist economics, that's interesting. They determined that there is a vibration that is caused by psilocybin. I definitely know what they're talking about. It's a vibration you can feel, and I definitely don't think it's pleasant. It also happens with DMT, I think, and with DMT there's a sound that accompanies it that's almost as bad as the vibration itself. And so you get this like, and supposedly it is shaking all that kind of crap loose. And it's particularly stimulating the language, the part of the brain that deals with language. So yeah, there's definitely a good plan to take that stuff. Getting pretty tired. It's almost 11 o'clock. My pitch one more time, you guys. We have been demonetized, and we really do appreciate your support. There is PayPal and Zelle addresses, email address in the description, and a Binance Smart Chain wallet address for cryptocurrency, and a Cash App address. So if you are in a position to support us in that way, we really do appreciate it. Patreon for premium content, and the Ritual Magic course, I'm going to start putting installments of that this week. And if nothing else, please do hit the like button, share these videos with anyone you think might enjoy them or benefit from them, and we do appreciate it. So, any more questions, you guys? I'm down to answer some questions. I don't know if we really talked about the zombie apocalypse that much, but so the eyes of the world in the zombie apocalypse, basically, and you know, you guys really, even if you don't like their music, you got to give props to the Grateful Dead. Try to imagine being like the most woke person now, basically, like in 1967 or whatever. You know, I mean, those guys were like the first amongst the, you know, white 1950s American people to suddenly have psychedelic consciousness. That must have been so fucking crazy, and also so terrifying, and such an oppressive environment to just suddenly come to that level of awareness. And so the song that I started this with, Eyes of the World, nice. Yeah, Cardano's good. Buy some safe DMT too, by the way. It's super low market cap. No way you're gonna lose money. It benefits psychedelic research. It's a good one. And the team, I have literally spent like 6 hours talking to them in Zoom conferences and stuff. Oh, and also, I did not come to an agreement about payment for influencing for them. And they paid me more than I would have expected. And so I think that really speaks volumes about their integrity. So, you know, I mean, there's so many scams and rug pulls and just bad projects out there. I know with absolute certainty that Safe DMT is totally committed to their mission. They're not only going to support psychedelic research, they're join the Telegram too. If you look here, I'll actually put it in the chat right now. Yeah, they're definitely good people, the Safe DMT crew. And you know, I mean, sometimes I'll talk to them at like 10 in the morning, and then I'll message them in the chat, and they'll answer me at 3 a.m. Here, I'm gonna put it in the chat for you. There you go. And you can't really just buy it. You have to swap at Pancake Swap for BNB, maybe for USDT, but I think BNB is the way to go. Pancake Swap, yeah, that's. Oh, and also when you put in the amount, you know, it's one of those deflationary tokens that's like, you know, you buy $100 is like 5 billion tokens or something. So when it's a very small market cap, which is why one of the reasons why this is such a good opportunity, you guys. If you get in there now while the market cap I think is like under $50,000, if it does go to 50 million, which is not, you know, that's like a mid-sized market cap for altcoins, I guess shitcoins. That's huge upside, huge. And I think that it could. I mean, even 20 million would be, I mean, shit, 500,000 would be a 10x from where they're at now. So, you know, the chances are almost 100%. Not financial advice. I have more in common with Aleister Crowley than Warren Buffett. So, just saying. It's not like, you know, go ahead, sue me. What are you going to sue me for? But we're all supposed to say that. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, the Safe DMT crew, they're also very interested in supporting Indigenous people. I mentioned to them my plan about approaching, you know, the Shuar Federation people here and some of the other local tribes, the Waorani, and just getting them set up with cryptocurrency wallets and kind of breaking the news and, you know, explaining to them how it works, and they're very much interested in helping me, working with me, collaborating with me on getting that happening. So yeah, I think it's a really good project to support. Do it to it. So what else? Is that it? Are we done? I mean, I don't mind if you guys have anything else that you want to discuss. I'll let me look back and see if there's questions I've missed. Okay, well, if you guys don't have anything else, then any thoughts on the pineal gland? Yes, actually. No one is calcifying your pineal gland, whatever. It's not real. The pineal gland works because there are piezoelectric calcium crystals in it naturally. It's supposed to be made of calcium. Like that is literally I mean, I'm trying to be polite about it, you know, I almost said it's like the dumbest rumor, but there's no reason for people to know this stuff, so it's not like they're dumb because they don't know. I don't want to say that, but and DMT is not released by the pineal gland. There's no proof of that, absolutely none, zero, zip, zilch. It was suggested by Strassman, but he was just conjecturing. There's no clinical evidence of it. There's not any more. Also, breath work to release DMT is not a thing because there isn't enough of it in any gland in the body. There's barely enough of it in the entire system in a human being to cause a psychedelic experience. So no matter how much breathing you do, you're not going to release enough DMT to cause any kind of experience. The pineal gland, you know, when you're born, if they removed it right away and cut it open, it is made of piezoelectric calcium crystals. Well, sure, I'm not saying that breath work won't alter your consciousness and that it's not similar even or whatever. I'm just saying that these rumors are misinformation. Yeah, that's the thing. When people talk about calcified pineal gland, it is completely ridiculous because that's how it works. It has piezoelectric calcium crystals, calcium carbonate crystals. And so I know that it works, that the third eye has function. Um, when you drink ayahuasca, and I know I've told this story a few times on the channel, but I also know some of you guys are new, so I'll go ahead and, yeah, I have tips for DMT breakthrough. I know some of you guys are new, so I'll share this one more time. Um, First of all, the pineal gland has rods and cones, and it's connected to the visual cortex of the brain. And so, one time I drank ayahuasca, and I was in the jungle laying on the deck, and a mosquito came flying, and I watched it land on my forehead. And it took me a second to realize that I had my eyes closed, and I heard it, flying up, and I could see it, and I was watching it, but I was still thinking about all the crazy shit that had happened through the course of this ayahuasca experience. And so I realized I could see it, and then it bit me. And I was like, oh, holy shit, that's real. Because I saw right where it landed, you know what I mean? And then it bit me, and I was like, whoa, shit. So I looked down the railing, I could see all the rails, and I'd been there many times, so I thought maybe my brain could just, it could accurately create the railing and the visuals, everything was where it was supposed to be. So then I waved my hand in front of my face, I could see all my fingers, I tried making really complex movements and seeing if I could track it all perfectly, and I could. So, I was really just going like, man, it really seems like I'm looking through my forehead right now. Bearing in mind that the third eye is also supposed to facilitate our other senses, telepathy and precognition and all of this sort of thing, which I've experienced all that to such an extent that I'm absolutely 100% positive that they're real things. I don't think we need to invoke woo. I think it can all be understood in a mechanistic sense. But when I went downstairs the next morning, when I saw the shaman, the first thing he said to me is, sometimes you can see through your forehead when you drink the medicine. And then the next day, just coincidentally, which, in my opinion is an experience of the universal mind, like it finds ways to communicate. But I read that the pineal gland actually is connected to the visual cortex, and that it has rods and cones. And ayahuasca, with its capacity to, come on, you guys, the alkaloids were called telepamine and telepathine prior to being renamed harmaline and harmala, or tetrahydroharmaline, I think. Yeah, if you're predisposed to mental illness, then you can't be fucking with DMT. That's pretty much off limits for you. And I wouldn't smoke K2 or spice ever. These synthetic, they're very dangerous and really bad. So yeah, your pineal gland is supposed to be full of calcium. That whole thing is bullshit. Well, how many times did you use DMT? For me, LSD is a much better working tool. X Games athletes tend to take it before competition. It's considered cheating because you're using more of your brain. You have better inter-region connections. So just as with psilocybin, the default mode network is communicating with the rest of the brain in a way that it doesn't normally. And you have electrical activity in parts of the brain that aren't normally used. And so when you take any of these compounds, as long as it's not an overwhelming dose, once you have some experience, you can do everything you normally would do except better. And a lot of people find that a really offensive idea because they say, well, it's cheating, or you should be able to do it in your natural state, or they think that it's a delusion. And of course, that actually doesn't make any sense. What's happening there is that these people don't understand the nature of the substances, they don't understand the neurobiology and the neurochemistry of it, and they don't understand that saying that you should be able to compete with someone who has taken 100 micrograms of LSD, whether you're talking about playing a musical instrument or jumping on a bicycle 180 feet in the air and doing backflips. You should be able to compete with those people without LSD is like saying that you should be able to go to the moon without a space shuttle. It's just not possible without the technology. I'm a musician, I've listened to a lot of music, and in certain ways, the Grateful Dead and some of the other psychedelic bands are on a level that a lot of people that have not taken psychedelics can't even perceive it. They can't even understand it. It just goes right over their head. They actually perceive whatever they can process, and it doesn't actually represent what's really there. I was one of those people. You know what I mean? That's how I discovered this. My friends tried to turn me on to the Grateful Dead when I was younger, and I was like, this isn't really that interesting to me. And then I happened to take LSD and walk by a stereo, and there was a live Grateful Dead performance playing, and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? And so once I knew how to perceive this more subtle and sophisticated you know, I don't think that we know exactly what it is that, why it is that psychedelics trigger trigger latent mental illness. But I could conjecture, and I'm probably right about this. I'm just saying that it hasn't been like clinically proven. Well, yeah, Andrew, and I think also it is literally the collective mind. You know, you have guys that are using more of their brains than normal, and I think that because they were so free, they had no stress, they had no fear, they had a buffer between them and the police, they had a buffer between them and society because they were rich. So they could take LSD pretty fearlessly, they were all super intelligent. And so I think that they were able to achieve a level of mastery in that state of mind that would elude most people. And so they they had some mystery school background. So there was more to it than just taking large doses of LSD. But I think they were able to get into the collective mind state and actually function there, which, you know, is probably not something that has happened with any other group of people before. Partly just for lack of effort. People don't know it's there, you know. Okay, so we were talking about schizophrenia and yeah. We'll get back to that story. There's actually something that happened a few years earlier with two different groups of people. Yeah. That was crazy. That girl, 15 years old, and she accidentally took a massive dose of LSD, and her bipolar disorder was just gone. And that's, you know, something I talk about a lot is I think that one of the reasons that we have some difficulty gaining traction with the psychedelic movement is that we sound like over-enthusiastic evangelists. It just seems too absurd to be true, especially when it comes to addiction. I think the idea that you could use something like LSD to get rid of an addiction, to a lot of people, that's like a horrendously damaging suggestion to even make. I mean, I literally was ran out of a Narcotics Anonymous meeting for trying to tell them that ayahuasca would help them more than Narcotics Anonymous ever could think about. And it's actually come to light that LSD was going to be the 13th step in no, I haven't heard that California did that. I've heard that Oakland did that. Yes, psychedelics are making a huge disruption in the mental health space because that's what we're saying. The one single, what did the researcher at Johns Hopkins a while ago said, that it is simply unprecedented in the history of psychiatry that a medicine can have such lasting and powerful effects on such a wide spectrum of mental health disorders. Humphrey Osmond in the 60s said the same thing. Dr. Humphrey Osmond's, his what do you call it, summary or summation of the research to the government was that he thought that every psychological or mental health disorder known to psychology could be fixed with psychedelics. And in response to that, the government said, let's go and arrest them all and put them in jail forever because Big Pharma is not having it. And it remains a threat to a lot of industries, including the therapy industry. Berkeley just released a study where they gave people a dose of 5-MeO-DMT, and they said that it could cut therapy down to a tiny fraction of, you know, the time that is required now, reduce it to like one, basically just come smoke 5-MeO DMT and you'll be fine. Okay, but we were trying to get to schizophrenia and mental illness being triggered, and so the reducing valve theory that Dennis McKenna and Aldous Huxley and myself, when I was a teenager, I mean, it just seemed obvious to me that the psychedelics weren't necessarily putting you in a state where you're hallucinating. That could happen at very high doses, but it was just that some veil was being removed and you could actually see the sort of like energetic patterns kind of floating in the air and stuff. And I was convinced that these were real things that we just didn't perceive normally. And so, Dennis McKenna is not the only neuroscientist at this point that holds this opinion. And it is also a fact that there is a certain type of schizophrenia that is associated with shamanism, and it's generally called essential schizophrenia. And so it's different from paranoid schizophrenia, or, there's a whole bunch of different types of schizophrenia. And so essential schizophrenia is like it's a Western way of talking about having a good relationship with the consciousness that exists beyond our normal capacities of consciousness to engage with, I would say. And I think that schizophrenia is a matter of having the reducing valve in our nervous system is always off. And I think that, when we talk about this reducing valve that filters out all these overwhelming sensory input, the thoughts of other people and animals, and the visual manifestations of energy and all of these sort of things, they can't filter those out. And I think that because they're already having an issue with that, when you add the psychedelics, it just turns it just turns the reducing valve way off, and it's just really overwhelming for them. And I think that the people that are predisposed to mental illness, they're just right on the line of being overwhelmed by their malfunctioning reducing valve. And so when you add psychedelics to the equation, they just blow a fuse. I think there was another, okay, so then we were talking about what happens when the 46-year-old woman snorted a staggering 550 times the normal recreational dose of LSD and not only survived, but found that her foot pain she had suffered since her 20s was dramatically reduced. And so here is what's up with that. The neuroplasticity that is enhanced when you take a massive dose. I think this is difficult for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, but it's like when people are really resistant to the idea that psychedelics can help with depression, it's because they don't understand the mechanism. And the mechanism is that the neuroplasticity is enhanced to such a degree that the old patterns, the old neural nets, can be reconfigured instantly and permanently. And so in the case of nerve damage, a really, really high dose, I would venture to reckon, catalyzes or facilitates a super neuroplastic state, and so the brain has the capacity to direct its wiring. That's how we learn, and so if you are able to achieve sufficient neuroplasticity, the brain knows how to correct bad wiring. So in the case of pain, I think it's always trying to reconfigure those neural nets. And so she took a massive amount of LSD, and also there's a tremendous amount more electrical activity in the brain. And so I think that the current is increased, and then the neuroplasticity is enhanced, and so you can even fix these nerve damage situations like this woman was experiencing. And I was going to add to your list of people that have taken massive amounts of LSD and not gone crazy or died. There was 2 separate groups of kids, I think 10 people in total, that accidentally snorted huge lines of crystal LSD, thinking that it was MDMA or cocaine or meth or God only knows. No. Neurogenesis is when the brain is developing new neural pathways and cells, and neuroplasticity is it's malleability. They're 2 different things, and all psychedelics actually catalyze neurogenesis and enhance neuroplasticity, and so it's very much a dual whammy kind of effect where you have the capacity to re-engineer neuronets, but then you also have new brain cells and neural pathways forming at an extremely accelerated rate, and then you combine that with like the electrical activity in parts of the brain we don't normally use, and you just really have an explosion of potentiality in terms of enhanced consciousness and enhanced intelligence and improved memory, and also the ability to make therapeutic progress without assistance, because you have all of this happening, and on top of all that you have the different regions of the brain communicating in ways that they don't normally. So yeah, LSD actually is the top performer, which kind of surprised me. I thought that DMT probably would be, but it turns out that strictly in terms of the neurobiological physical stuff, LSD catalyzes the all of that shit more than DMT or psilocybin, but ketamine, MDMA, all of these things that we would classify as psychedelics, or even in the general sort of related to psychedelics, you know. Yeah, it can reverse brain damage caused by alcoholism. There are numerous studies on this specifically, and it doesn't have to be alcoholism. All addiction and depression, your little wiggly fingers at the end of, I'm sorry it's late, my brain's not working, dendrites, I guess, the little fingers between the synapses, they shrivel and die from depression or addiction, which are the same thing really. And psilocybin in particular, and that's where, you know, you got to watch out when you're saying LSD is the top performer, because it does catalyze neurogenesis the most, and it enhances neuroplasticity the most, but the regenerative capacity of psilocybin is greater than LSD. So if you were trying to regenerate damaged brain cells, if you have brain damage, if you've literally been hit on the head or something, or you have consumed massive quantities of alcohol for decades or whatever, psilocybin is going to regenerate those shriveled brain cells with greater efficacy than the other compounds. Yeah, LSD is extraordinary. I mean, I consumed it for years on a nearly daily basis. I wish I could right now. It's just a matter of access. It's just way too expensive here. In California, it was 50 cents or something a dose, you know. And in California, I think people that don't live in California really underestimate the acid culture there. LSD is basically considered a vitamin. It's part of your diet. It's food. LSD is food. And it's true. I mean, my brain had been so severely damaged by the drugs that they gave me to withdraw from Suboxone. They gave me Suboxone to get off of Vicodin, which was like, it's like saying, oh, we have a rat in the house or a mouse in the house. Let's drop an atomic bomb on the house to get rid of the mouse, you know? It was just the dumbest fucking thing ever. And it just totally melted my brain. I couldn't remember music. I'm still not like, you know, I'm still not back to where I was before I took pharmaceutical painkillers for decades. But I definitely would credit LSD with rejuvenating me and saving me from the downward spiral. That, oh yeah, Suboxone, man, I have never recovered. You know, despite the gains that I've made from ayahuasca and my other practices, recently I've gotten back into doing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. The last couple of days I've missed it, but you know, ritual magic almost every day, and it's all really helped. But I'm a shadow of the person I was before that. Well, I wouldn't really call it tobacco treatment. I haven't actually been like drinking it. Although I'm tempted, because if I do have a bacterial infection or something, it'll kill it for sure. But the other thing is that if I do have liver damage, which is something that the doctors have suggested, tobacco could be very dangerous to take in high doses. So I'm just snorting a little bit, but I've felt better since I've resumed these practices for sure. Yeah, man, taking OxyContin for decades is not a good idea. It's definitely a bad one. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing of the accidental discovery of LSD, I really, one of the conspiracy theories that I hate the most, why do I eat animals? I mean, do me a favor. Let your mouth fill up with saliva a little bit. Now swallow. You just swallowed like 100 billion organisms. I don't really distinguish between rocks and animals. To me, it's all a manifestation of consciousness. There are indications that plants are sentient. So also, if you are vegan or vegetarian and you consume a lot of soy, the combines that harvest the soy are, they're carrion birds that follow them around, and they just indiscriminately destroy turtles, fish, reptiles, everything that creepeth and crawleth, and birds, and just shred them all to oblivions without discrimination. So, for me, it's about avoiding processed food. It's about not eating factory farmed animals. I mean, honestly, I eat grubs, like, called chantacuros. In the Amazon, they're the palm trees. If you cut them down and let them sit for 2 months, they smell like hell. Ferments in the inside, and they fill up with these grubs, and they're delicious. You never eat a grub? Well, you should try it. They're amazing. I mean, they're one of the principal food sources for half the planet or something. We at least cook them here. In Asia, they have the identical grubs, and they eat them raw. One thing I don't know, though, is what they turn into. Because grubs they're not just grubs, like they're larvae of some kind of beetle. And these things are like that fucking long. Slimy yet satisfying. They're not really slimy at all. They're slimy inside. The best way to eat them, the Shuar people, this originated with the Shuar tribe. They cook everything in a leaf. It's not a banana leaf, but it looks like a banana leaf. It's more narrow. I don't remember which plant. Probably something related to a banana. But at any rate, they take some palm oil and put it in there, and then they tie the leaf up and they put it over the coals, and it cooks usually it's fish. Those are usually fish cooked inside of the leaf, but sometimes it's chicken, and sometimes it's the chantacuros, the grubs, And that's the best way. If you can get them from a Shuar person, usually at a roadside grill, and they're believed to have curative properties, like people eat them a lot if they have sore throats, because they're supposed to be anti-inflammatory. But yeah, they're really good, man. I actually have a video on my channel eating the chanakurus, and I was really nervous about it. I drank a bunch of coca, what is it, aguardiente, it's like a cane sugar liquor and coca tincture together first, and I was all like scared, and then I ate it, and it was like one of the best things I've ever eaten. Delicious. But the thing is, if you don't cook them well enough, there's like this, if they're runny inside, that's gross, man. Nothing weirder than biting into a grub and like it like explodes skunk into your mouth. I don't like that very much. But yeah, there's a lot of food here in this part of South America that you know, in Amazonas, that a lot of people would probably not be inclined to try. Chicha is one of those things. It's chewed, either palm fruit or yucca root, and then it's spit into a bowl, and then it's left to ferment, and then you drink it. So, okay, good night, Andrew. So yeah, I gotta go too, man. It's been 2 hours. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please support us on Patreon or the PayPal or Zelle link in the description. There's a cryptocurrency address, Cash App. We really do appreciate your support because we're demonetized. So if you think this content has value for you, please show it. And I will be back in a couple of days. I'm gonna do another actually tripping guitar improv thing. Hopefully we'll have the sound improved. We're gonna try to remix all of the backing tracks and a little bit more bass, and hopefully make them louder. So we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you.